Hello and welcome to Console Shock Retro and Modern Gaming Chat with me, Trev, and as always, Stu. How's it going, Stu? I hope you're absolutely spot on.
Yeah, Trev. I'm enjoying the World Cup. Well pumped for it. Obviously, this isn't going to go out, so I'm not going to talk about any results or things. But yeah, I'm just enjoying the World Cup, and it pains me to say, but everyone seems to be having a great time in America, and they seem to be like really good hosts. But yeah, it seems like it's going really well over there, and it's good. Just enjoying the World Cup.
Yeah, it's been pretty good. It's been difficult to watch some of the timings of the games, and avoiding spoilers to try and catch up on games the next day has been a bit difficult. I've actually watched a lot more than I thought I would. Actually, I've kind of had a little technique of sort of the games that are on during the day. Obviously, you can watch those, but then if there's one at 1 o'clock. I've sort of got up and avoided going on my phone or anything, and I'll get like a download of it, and I'll watch the download, and then I can do that if I'm working from home. I can do that sort of in the background while I'm working, and that's actually meant I've been able to catch most of the games. I think I've probably only completely missed maybe two. Well, the one when it was the final round of group stage stuff, when you had sort of 2 games simultaneously, you kind of have to kind of sacrifice one to watch the other. So a few of those games I wasn't able to watch, but everything else, and it's been good. There's obviously weird political stuff that kind of like the last one, really, but that never really affect fans. Will still go. There's enough. I know the prices were horrendous and all that stuff. But
obviously,
there's enough upper middle class people that will pay that money. So
I think there's lots of Brits already in the US. Lots will go over there, and you knew the prices were going to be high for a long time. But I think the prices are a lot cheaper if you went through the England football club. I think you get points for going to the qualifiers and so on, and all the bits and bobs, and then you can get a ticket. Sort of slightly cheaper, but obviously, the prices are horrendous, and obviously, all bits and pieces. But looking at I think we had the Mexico game the other day, England-Mexico, and one thing I took from that was actually how hospitable the Mexican fans were, even after they lost. They put in a great effort, and there was like scenes of them sort of clapping and almost sort of celebrating with the English fans and sort of shaking their hands and getting photos, and it was just like, what it felt like a really good moment where I've been to sort of plenty of games where I've sort of talked about, it's not related to computer games at all, but it's quite nice to sort of see all the fans mixed in together, and it actually sort of shows that you can do that and you can have no trouble, and
absolutely,
it's sort of good to see. And it's almost like I'd like people to do a sort of an experiment. If you've got 2 arch rivals, and then you just go, well, you can just buy whatever ticket you want and just go in there and enjoy the game. I think the fact that they're segregated, it almost sort of generates problems. But if they're all sort of mixed in together, you're next to you're a Charlton fan. I suppose I'm a Charlton fan as well. Next to a Millwall fan, and on the other side's another Charlton. There's some Millwall fans in front, and you actually just enjoyed the game and laughed and joked with each other. Would that work? Well, probably not, but it seems to work at the World Cup.
Yeah, I think they should probably trial it over here. They should. I would probably recommend the Millwall West Ham game in the Championship next season. That would be a good one. And in Scotland, probably Celtic v Rangers. Celtic Rangers.
Just put all the tickets on free sale. Anyone can buy them, whoever they want. No memberships needed. But I've been to sort of games where I've watched. They've been sort of quite heated, but in the National League or National League sort of South, and then at half time,
Welling.
Exactly. Then everyone sort of switches ends, and gives yourself a bit of, you'll shit or something as you're passing them on the halfway line, going to the other end, and it all seems to work all right. But
it's all lovable football banter, isn't it? Lovable football banter trademark.
Exactly. But credit to the Mexican fans. They seem like absolutely sort of top, sort of top fellas, top lads.
They are,
and
lovely bunch of lads, as the Irish say.
Lovely bunch of lads.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
By the time the next show that we do, would have had the final, so we might even touch upon that a little bit when we get to the next show. But for today, there's been pretty much just after we recorded our last show, the first big bit of big news sort of dropped. Probably, actually 2 or 3 days after that. And that was the Steam machine. We talked about it a ton of times and many episodes leading up to its price announcement and ultimately its actual launch now. And there's that. We're going to talk about that on today's show. And there was kind of an even bigger bombshell, I would say, probably impacts more people than just the Steam machine on its own. And Sony basically saying we're not going to do physical media anymore. And within the next few years, it will be phased out completely. So yeah, that's something that happened literally in the last week. So we're going to talk about that as well. But what we'll do is we'll start off with the Steam machine, and we speculated, multiple times how much it could end up being, and probably thinking that it's going to be very much on the expensive side, and there was not really any hope that it was going to be. The Steam Deck was very well priced. 350 quid for the base model.
It felt too cheap, to be honest.
Yeah, it was only slightly more expensive than a Switch and considerably more powerful. So it was a no-brainer, really. If you're into PC gaming or want to get into it, that was a fantastic price. It's horrendously priced now with that increase that it's experienced that we have already talked about. But we were speculating about the Steam machine. In an absolutely ideal world, I think with the hardware it has, which we know is fairly already outdated by several years, really. It's basically a PS5 essentially. I think it should really cost about what a PS5 costs. And probably again, ideal scenario with no weird AI RAM apocalypse thing going on. About 500 quid, I think, for the base model, maybe 600 at a push. And then the top spec model, 100, 150 on top of that. But we're way past that, unfortunately. Again, we're not really surprised, but it still wasn't great to see the price. You're paying now for a 512 gig model, which is, to be fair, a little bit useless. A couple of AAA games from the current era might end up wiping out that entire 512 gig. 879. You can grab a controller with that as well for 938. And then you can jump up to the 2 terabyte, which is kind of the minimum, really, you would need in terms of storage these days. 1,149 or 1,208 with a controller. So, Stu, what are your initial thoughts on those prices?
Well, unfortunately, it's no real surprise, and obviously, I've known for a while that we're going to have a good podcast about this and sort of talk about it. And I think what I've been, I've watched some sort of comparison videos, and and they're sort of comparing it to the PlayStation 5, and then they're saying, well, actually, it's not quite as powerful, and that's 5-6 years old technology. It's not quite as powerful, and then it costs a bit more, and I don't think I never had the plan to get one. That wasn't in my I've already got a PC. I'm very happy with that. I've got an Xbox and so on, and probably got a few too many systems to be honest. But I think it's one thing I have enjoyed watching is people actually going out there and making. Now, obviously, forget the form factor. You know, what's good about the Steam machine is it's in a really small box. You know, apparently it runs, you know, really, really quietly, very, very silent. That's a good thing. But then all these people are actually going out there and go, well, I'm going to make my own. I'm going to make my own for less. And they're going out and they're, you know, putting graphics cards, you know, and putting together PCs. And I've enjoyed those videos on YouTube. And so well, actually you can, you know, get a lot more power, more flexibility for the same, if not less. And but that's not really in the you know, the sweet spot, you know, box that, you know, a lot of what people like about it is you can just, you know, press the button on the controller and that turns your TV on, that turns the console on. You know, SteamOS is you know, a really, really good experience. So that's a really good experience. It's easy to get into. A lot of people have already got a huge investment. They might have spent thousands of pounds on a huge Steam library. So then the thought of playing that on the Steam machine and just having that all raring to go, so it almost feels like, you know, imagine a console launch that came out and it already had, you know, 500,000 games already that you could just play. And you know, I think that's a huge sort of selling point. And yeah, so I mean, to look at the specs, I've got them. You probably got them to say, you know, on my second screen here. But you know, as a Zen 4 processor and an RDNA, so it's sort of got a sort of mobile sort of graphics processor. It's got quite a lot of RAM, 16 gigabytes. I don't understand the 512. I think you sort of quoted that as saying, "Oh, that's not really enough, is it?" And I think, yeah, no. you're absolutely right, because the OS is going to take up at least 40-50 gig of that, if not more, or maybe less. I don't know. And then you've got, as soon as you start putting lots of big games on there, then it starts to really sort of fill up pretty quickly. And one of the things, you know, everyone's sort of playing that new James Bond game. Actually, I want to get that when it sort of
Bond-charted.
Yeah, Bond-charted. But that looks like, you know, you have to turn down the settings to, you know, medium and turn off a few things. And I think they made a bit of a mistake by sort of claiming, oh yeah, you can get 60 frames at 4K. Well, you might be able to do with upscaling and, you know, putting the settings down a little bit. But I think that's been a little bit sort of disingenuous. I wouldn't say that it's, you know, they're out to try and sort of scam anyone. But I think with some of these newer games, I mean, I wouldn't say, you know, buy this and this will be your console for, you know, 5-6 years. That if you bought a PlayStation 5 on day one, you would 100% say, yeah, that'd be my main machine for 5, 6, 7 years, and then I'll get the next one or whatever. So it does seem a little bit like, ooh, I don't know, it's not got enough power, and to go back to people who've just been buying machines that have almost, you know, got sort of twice as much power, and it costs less to build, and that for me, I'll be more interested in doing that.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much what you said there. If it wasn't that sweet spot of maybe £500 or the cost of a base PS5, you know, whatever that is at the moment, then I think it would have been worth the money. I mean, you'd still be able to complain that, well, it's still out of date hardware, but at that price, I mean, the PS5 is 519 quid at the moment. If the base Steam Deck was that, I think that'd be okay to pay that money for it, but it's just not worth it for to pay what nearly double that. Certainly to get one that's got a decent amount of storage in it. I don't think it's worth it. It might be a bit more of a compelling choice if that was the only way that you could use SteamOS. but it isn't. They've now released SteamOS, as officially as a version you can then just install on a PC now. It's officially supported, and Bazzite essentially. But actually it's SteamOS and not Bazzite. So you can pop that on any PC you've got that has AMD hardware. So yeah, you can build your own basically, and a lot of the builds that I've seen, and to be ones that are fairly decent gaming sort of systems, they tend to cost still around the same, but with more power. So if you're going to be spending 800, 900 quid, you might as well get, a big box. I understand there is still some appeal with the Steam machine. It's a small cube, looks a bit nicer under the telly. You can fit under the telly for starters, and you can wake it from your controller. And that might be the absolute deal breaker for any other kind of PC, that it can't do those things. I mean, if you've got a USB controller or a mouse, if you've got, let's say you've got a PC with SteamOS installed on it and you want to wake that from where you're sat on your sofa, as long as you have a mouse connected via a wireless USB dongle, you can hit the buttons on the mouse and that'll wake it up without you having to go, walk over to it. It's not as nice as having just the controller and nothing else and hitting a button and bang, it's up. But you're 90% of the same experience by just having a mouse sat with you somewhere that will just do that. You probably want to have a mouse available to you anyway, because there might be some games that just work better with a mouse, even with the trackpads on the Steam controller. And yeah, it's going to be potentially, you could have something that's ginormous, that's obviously, these big RGB lit monstrosities that you see Alienware and from anywhere. But, okay, it's not going to fit snugly under a TV, but just have it off to the bloody side or something, or put it behind the TV, and you'll get the same effect, really. And SteamOS will work just as well as it does on the Steam machine. Okay, minus that waking it from the controller. But, the games will run better. And if you're spending around that same amount of money, you could spend a lot less and just get some old Dell bloody Optiplex that's been thrown out by an office. Stick a cheap AMD graphics card that's maybe something that's around the level of a base PS5. You might be able to get a system then going with SteamOS on it for less than a Steam machine that will be a similar level. So yeah, I think it'll still. I would expect the initial batches to sell out. So you'd probably be difficult to get a Steam machine over the next 5-6 months, maybe longer, because there's enough fans of Valve hardware.
100%,
it will just sell out, and they don't make enough of them. It'll be interesting in a year and a half, or maybe just a year's time, to see if they just sat with inventory that's not shifting, especially if the price goes up again, which it might. But yeah, it's just it was a price I think we were expecting, but I mean, a lot of people are saying it's being very melodramatic. I mean, it's YouTube and social media, people are like that by default, but I don't think it's not dead. It's not going to die. Valve don't need to sell 90 million of these like Sony do.
No,
they're getting money from Steam, regardless if you put it on some random Dell you've just repurposed into a Steam machine, or if you buy a Steam machine. So it can sell almost as little as as it takes for them just to get the money back. Really, I would hope that it's successful enough that they'll continue to make Steam hardware, like another Steam Deck and another Steam machine, and maybe over the years, if things calm down, the prices will come down and they'll be more reasonably priced in the future. I mean, I have doubts about that. I'm worried that a lot of these companies are just going to keep charging these prices because people are used to them now. We don't need and we don't need to charge less. Plus, our margins are at that. We're used to that level of margin now, so I think there's a chance that things might stay the same. But if they can make them cheaper, this will get kind of an ecosystem going. They'll be able to. SteamOS will get better and support more devices. I hope there are other companies that make, like we've had with We've basically had the Legion Go, a version of the Legion Go has come out with SteamOS pre-installed. I hope we have more third-party boxes that are SteamOS.
100%. I was going to describe this as a prototype proof of concept. So the benefit of the Steam machine is look, here's something, and we're not going to lose money on this and put ourselves in a difficult position and subsidize the gaming market. But what we're saying here is you can make a machine, you can put SteamOS. SteamOS is free. You can make a machine. We proved you can do it here. So what about Lenovo? What about Asus? What about all these other companies? Coming out of China and Taiwan and everything. Go, well, actually, we sold 1 million units of these in a month or whatever it is. So then actually a lot of other companies are going to go out and go, okay, yeah, well, I'll make it, but I'll do a slightly different processor. Well, actually, I'll give it more RAM, or well, actually, people want it for less, so I'll cut it back a little bit more. And I think it's actually what Steam is doing is making a proof of concept. It's making a new way to play PC games, and they did the same with the Steam machine. So the Steam machine came out, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, all these different handheld consoles came out. Some run Windows, but they, probably most people still bought the games from Steam. Some, run SteamOS and so on. And that's just, I think they're from their point of view, they don't care if they sell 500,000 or 10 million, because people are still going to buy games from their shop. But now I think a lot of people are going to be looking at this and going, wow, it's small, it's fit under the TV, well, we can do that, we can make that. They prove that it can be done, and people kind of want this, and I think it's actually going to lead to, like we saw with the Steam Deck, is a hell of a lot more, not knockoffs, improved Steam machines, or Steam machines that go, well, actually, everyone complained they had a mobile chip in there. Let's see if we can get it a proper full size sort of desktop GPU in there, and it might be a bit bigger. We'd have better cooling on there, but it doesn't matter. It'll just give people different options, and that's the way I think it's going to go.
Yeah, I mean, presumably, these companies will be able to just, I don't know if they need to get a special license from Valve. I mean, I don't think it's fully open source like other distributions of Linux. So I think Valve probably want to.
Oh, okay. At least get.
They might want, but it might just be they want you just have to ask them permission, and then you just go do whatever you want with it.
Well, they did that one on the Lenovo one, didn't they?
Yeah. So they are encouraging it. I can imagine it's cheaper than Windows, which obviously we have to pay for it, and the companies that want to sell it on their machines have to pay for it. I think it's a better setup than that. But yeah, I mean, we haven't seen anything yet. At the moment, it's just people bashing together their own sort of Steam machines. But I think the likes of Asus and Lenovo, or companies that at least have some kind of gaming, segment to their PC selling business, will hopefully put together, some desktop, some kind of, Steam likes that will potentially be cheaper, and it will, spark a price war. And we will get things that are as small as the Steam machine and have the same functionality, and are pre-built, and they'll be cheaper. We can hope that's what this is going to trigger. But yeah, I mean,
I was going to touch upon. Oh yeah, good idea.
Yeah. In terms of the Steam machine as it is, I mean, I would recommend it to anybody if you're desperate to get into PC gaming. I mean, I've already said, we said on the last podcast about, you can go to Curry's and get a Legion Go. If you want a Steam-based handheld that, has a bit more power than a base Steam Deck, just get that. That's like 600 quid. It's cheaper than a Steam machine, has more storage. And it won't be quite as good for AAA games, but it will just about be able to run them at low settings. You can dock it to play those games on your TV. Get that instead if you want a low-cost, easy entry into PC gaming. I can't recommend the Steam Deck for that anymore. Otherwise, I would say get a Steam Deck. Outside of that, bash together your own. But yeah.
No, I think it's because I'm sort of thinking about this, and I think it's easy to sort of bash the Steam machine, and it's I think it's a real innovation, sort of game changer, disruptor of the sort of the gaming market. And I think that's fair to say. And then I'll sort of think about positives of it, And then I was listening to a YouTube video or a podcast or something, and they were talking about total cost of ownership, TCO. So then I was like, okay, well, that's an interesting sort of point, isn't it? Because everyone's talking about, well, the obviously this is more expensive than the PlayStation 5. It's certainly more expensive than the Xbox Series X. But then with those two TV-based living room systems, you have to buy a membership. So that's, what's it, 50, 60 quid a year. Okay, right, that's an additional cost, isn't it? And then you have to buy, you're limited to one store to buy your games from. And so you have to buy them from the PlayStation store or the Xbox store. That's where you have to buy them from. But so you're sort of stuck into an ecosystem. So what you would then sort of argue is actually buying PC games or buying a Steam machine. Okay, the initial cost is £879, but you got the opportunity to buy games from GOG, from Epic Games Store, from Steam itself, and it has good sales. And people talk about the summer sales, the spring sales, and winter Christmas sales, whatever. But there's always sort of something sort of going on with promotions. You put stuff into your watch list, and it appears with a discount at some point. And you've obviously got a huge library of games there. So
there are the key sites as well. You're not necessarily tied to Steam or Epic. Yeah.
Exactly. There's key sites as well. So you've got huge sort of options for sort of buying the game. So yes, it is more expensive to buy the machine, but I think the total cost of ownership, TCO, as they said in this video, is cheaper. So And
there's that aspect, and there's also the aspect that it is just a PC. It's got a desktop mode. You can like edit video on it, create music, word process on it, do office work, browse the internet. You can't do any of that with a PS5 or an Xbox Series console. And that's something that they'll never be able to really compete with. So you obviously make those savings on not having to pay for cloud save storage and online gaming. You've got the cheaper digital versions of games. You can also, there are other things that the Steam machine has advantages on as well. It's backwards compatible with as far back as PC gaming began. A lot of that stuff is a bit hacky, and you'd have to mess around to get it working. Someone like me, I'm quite happy to jump through those hoops. It's not super easy a lot of the time. Well, there are a lot of games from going to the DOS days that you just buy on Steam, and they've actually set them up just to work. But you can just go back to the PS4 on the PS5, and the odd little sprinkling of PS3 and PSP and PS1 games that they've made available for the PS5. The PC can go back generations upon generations. Playing 360 and PS3 games, where there's a native PC port of those games like Dead Space or something, they run brilliantly on something like a Steam machine and a Steam Deck. You'll be able to max those settings out, and PS4 era games you can pretty much all run on high settings, and you'll get a pretty good experience. And you can't really do that on a PS5. I mean, you can't play PS3 games on like a PS5. You can on a Steam machine or PC through our PCS3. Yeah.
One thing we haven't actually touched upon is you can open it up and upgrade the RAM. You can upgrade the storage on there. So if you buy the 512 one, and that's still 879, so it's not a purchase on a whim. But if you go, well, actually, I'll buy that, and then let's say in a year's time, the memory prices drop down. So then you can go and get yourself a 1 terabyte hard drive or a 2 terabyte hard drive, stick that in there, and you go, well, actually, it's got 16 gig, but I can stick, 2 16 gig RAM sticks in there, and you get sort of twice as much memory in there to sort of improve it, to sort of give it an additional little bit of lifespan, Of course, it takes SD cards as well, so you can sort of stick those in, take games from your Steam machine, sort of move them across. But yeah, the whole point is that you can use a Steam machine for actually use it as a computer. So do all web browsing, so on, watch YouTube on there, and do a bit of video editing. I don't know how easy that would be if the software is actually available in the desktop mode, but you've certainly got a lot more flexibility on there than what you would ever have on a PS5. And I was sort of thinking the other day that the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, they're basically just locked down, quite poor PCs. So all you can do is just buy games from one shop, and the actual it's basically a 5-6 year old PC. That's all consoles really are in this day and age. And I think actually the Steam machine will give you a few more options on sort of what to do, and but it is slightly underpowered, I think, and overpriced.
I mean, you could argue the extra money you're spending is you could make up for it with not having to pay for those things that you do on a console, and the fact it does a lot of extra stuff as well. But it's something that's sold primarily to someone that only ever wants to play games on it and has zero interest in any of that stuff. It's just it's overpriced. I mean, the PS5 is overpriced at the moment because of the price rises it's suffered. But yeah, I mean, £800+, it's just not good value. And I think a better option, I mean, I'm not getting a Steam machine. I've got no plans to now. In terms of something a PC, something for PC gaming that I'll have permanently, connected to my TV. I'll be looking at Xbox Project Helix now, really, which will probably be about the same as what a Steam machine costs. Maybe a tiny bit more, might even cost a bit less. But that'll, if it is as open as we hope it will be, and there's some good sounds coming out of Microsoft that it potentially will be, I'll just wipe whatever's on there, stick SteamOS on it, and you potentially got a super, super powerful, next generation gaming PC, essentially, that will cost about the same as a Steam machine. And I could play all my Steam games on that, and it will run the latest stuff amazingly well as you can really run it at that point in time. The PS5 era stuff will run, better than it would have done on a PS5. You'd be able to jack all the settings up to ultra on that, and everything before that will just work because it's a PC. That's obviously holding out a lot of hope that Microsoft do just let you do anything with it, and to the point where you can just stick SteamOS on it. I think it will allow you to do that. Because it'll kind of be a selling point for them. I mean, they won't. I'm not saying they'll go out and say, "Hey, put SteamOS on this." I mean, this is an open thing that you can do whether you want. It's a PC, so you could do all the PC stuff, or you could just ignore that and just game on it, and and whatever. So I think if that is coming out next year, which is not that far away, realistically. I mean, probably 18 months away at most is when that'll be coming out. If it is 2027. Yeah, wait for that, and especially if it turns out you could install SteamOS on it, wait for that. Keep hold of that money, and spend it on something that will be a huge boost in performance, probably 10x boost in performance over a Steam machine. I mean, typically a new generation of consoles tends to be about 10 times, of a performance increase from the previous, sometimes more than that. And I remember actually reading somewhere that a PS1 was like 35 times more powerful than like a Sega Mega Drive or something, which is I would like to investigate that more and see if that's actually true, because that's incredible if it was. But what I'm saying is you obviously get a big jump in performance. You'll get that with the Helix, stick SteamOS on it, bang, you've got yourself a Steam machine that's about the same as what a Steam machine costs and is many, many times more powerful, and it'll be hopefully a neat looking box that you'll be able to stash under your, probably something that looks similar to what a Series S looks like now. I don't think it'll be as small as a Steam machine. I think that's impossible. But it'll be something that will look decent under the TV, And yeah, so I think that's probably the best option. I mean, was that something you would think about as well?
Well, I think it almost. I want to say with the Project Helix is that we still don't quite know what it is, how locked down it's going to be. Because they're talking about, it can play all previous Xbox games. It can. It can. Is it a PC? Is it this? Is it that? How locked down is it going to be? And part of me, it was. I want Project Helix to be actually a Windows PC that you just turn it on and it goes into like a really sort of clever desktop mode, and you've got access to your Steam library on there. You can buy games, from Steam, from Xbox, have Game Pass membership, and have it all just sort of work well. So you don't actually really need to have SteamOS on there. And
if that interface is on the level of SteamOS, it may not even be preferable to put SteamOS on it. Yeah, I doubt it'll be that good though. I hope it is. I doubt it.
On Digital Foundry, I was listening to that today. They did a really good piece all about how sort of Microsoft, they're messing up. That's probably what our next episode will be about. But and they were sort of saying that they've got this huge monopoly. Like 95% of computers use Windows, and I don't mind playing games on Windows, but you go on to the Xbox store, and it's just like, I can find the game on there. I can buy it. It doesn't offer. It's not really intuitive to use. It doesn't give me much information. It's just it's not a good experience. It sort of does what it's meant to do. And they were sort of saying on there that for 20 years they've never managed to get PC gaming done right. And so maybe I'm in some sort of cloud cuckoo land where I think that for Project Helix, they'll get it right, and well, I don't think they will.
They've had a couple of bites.
I hope they will.
They've had a few bites. There was games for Windows Live where they tried to sort of have an Xbox kind of interface, rubbish, which didn't work that great. And then with the Xbox sort of One era, there was called cross-buy kind of started, but there wasn't really any attempts to. There was kind of the Xbox app and things like that, but there was no attempt to really make it nice for playing it off the TV. And now we've got the full screen experience, which I have used. It is quite janky. It's probably the best thing the best attempt they've made so far, but it's still not good enough to be a dedicated, for your PC to basically be a dedicated console. It's still you're still dealing with Windows updates and telling you to, and to dive back into the desktop mode where you're then bombarded with use Copilot for this and subscribe to Office 365 and all that stuff, and it's still far too clunky. So there's a lot predicated on how the Xbox Helix experience is going to be, but that's probably potentially going to be a better gaming PC, console gaming PC than the Steam machine is for the same price. So. But you've touched upon it a little bit already with PlayStation and what's happening there. We should move on to that topic now of
exactly.
Just Sony announcing the end of discs. And I think my initial take on it is I think it was going to happen sooner rather than later. I mean, I am not quite as wedded to physical media as some people are being, having been basically full-time PC gaming. I mean, well, really, if you count, I think the Amiga is a PC, and you're a PC gamer if you gamed on that. I was a kid when I started doing it. But in terms of, sort of the Windows XP, Windows 7, era, I guess you could say, I've been PC gaming now full time since about 2014. And even at that point, the sort of PC physical media was really absolutely dying a death. And there were still games coming out fairly often with the game on a DVD. I remember getting FIFA 17 for the PC, and it came on 3 DVDs. Grand Theft Auto 5, that came on 7 DVDs.
Oh, wow.
So, the couple of years after I got into it, there were still games coming out. I remember getting Metal Gear Solid 5, and inside the box of that was just a single DVD. And I was like, this is definitely not the full game. And all it was the Steam installer. There was no game data on it at all. So it basically was just a key that unlocked the download on Steam. And I've been used to that. But the digital, ecosystem of PC gaming is far, far different to, the PlayStation. The PlayStation, you're obviously restricted as to you can only really buy the games on the PS Store. You can't shop around for keys at different places to get a cheaper price. So it's basically you pay what Sony want you to pay. All those games that you've bought work on the next generation of hardware. Is a big chunk of your library going to get chopped off when the next generation of hardware comes out because it just isn't compatible. All those PS3 digital downloads that you bought, none of them will work on your PS5. So there's that element. Whereas a game that I bought, if you bought something on Steam in 2004 when it launched, you're probably going to be able to still play that now if it hasn't been even if it's been delisted. A lot of those games will be in your library. Pretty much all of them. I've got games that have been delisted from Steam. I still have them in my library, and I can still download and play them. I have access to those files. You don't on the PS5. So if I'm really worried that Steam's going to pull the plug, I can copy those files over to somewhere to back them up. Good old games, they have DRM-free games, so you can download the installers and just store them on a hard drive or burn them to disks. You can do all that stuff with PC gaming, none of which you can do with the PS5. It lives on that console. You have no access to any of the files or anything like that. So, it's just, there's not really a second-hand market for PCs, so there's no argument there. But then a big factor of console gaming is the second-hand market. When I was a kid, 90% of my games were second-hand. It was very rare I'd get something brand new. So I don't know, there's what's going to come in to replace that. I guess nothing. So it's going to be the reaction has obviously been massive. People are very, very annoyed at it. I don't want to fall into the trap of thinking, well, all the YouTubers I watch are angry, therefore gamers as a whole all hate this. I don't think that's true. We kind of bounce around within a niche of gamers that are really into this stuff, and they're kind of a certain age demographic, let's say, that grew up with this stuff. The kids now that are playing games would never really have known, discs being the main way to buy games, so they probably might not give a crap. More casual gamers that are our age, that maybe just have Game Pass and nothing else, or just turn on their PS5, go on the store, see a deal, download, buy the game there and download it, and they're perfectly happy to do that. I might even be inclined to say that's the majority of people have that attitude and probably don't really give a damn. I
think 100. Of all the PlayStation or gamers, probably 90% of people aren't that bothered. On PlayStation, it's probably 50-60% of people aren't that bothered. And we've all got a lot of nostalgia of going, to buy the game in a shop and so on. And you think about sort of the UK market, and just to let you know, I think this should still be an option.
Oh yes, so do I. Just to be clear,
No, we both think this should be an option, not necessarily for every game, obviously, but for all the big games to give people an option. But there's nowhere to, if I said now, let's say it's the evening now, all the shops are shut. But if I wanted to go and buy a game and I got into my car and it was a Saturday afternoon, I don't know where I would actually go to buy the latest PlayStation 5 game. Obviously CX wouldn't have it. Game have all seemed to close down. Supermarkets don't do games anymore. Would I go to Argos? Not quite sure. I have to really think about this. So actually, you're buying games now. You would go to a website. You would pay the money to the website, and the next day or the day after, the game would arrive, you'll put it into your PlayStation 5, and you'll sit there for an hour while it downloaded the game onto the hard drive. Not installed it, downloaded it. So in essence, it's almost like you're not really buying the games anymore on a disc, and I think a lot of this came from sort of Grand Theft Auto 6. Now I'm really excited for Grand Theft Auto 6. I'm sure you're going to buy it. I pre-ordered it the other day, and I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be a cracking game. I've always enjoyed the Grand Theft Auto games, but then before they said, the pre-orders are going to be 25th of June. So I was thinking, okay, right, I go onto Amazon. I want to get this game on disc, but then it came out to go. Well, actually, it's not going to come out on disc. You can buy a box, and it'll have a code in it. And I was thinking, right, okay, so I'll get the box, and then I'll get the code. So I might get the game by let's say lunchtime. So I'll put the code in, when I get home from work, and then an hour or two later it will have downloaded or whatever. Okay, right, then I can play it. So I could buy it for the same amount and pre-install it on my Xbox. Well, I might as well just do that. I can't sell it on once I've completed it. I can't, I don't want to wait for a sale because it's Grand Theft Auto 6. I want to play this on day one. I have done, Grand Theft Auto 5, Grand Theft Auto 4, and that, I think that was almost the catalyst that we think, well, actually, if Grand Theft Auto can do it, well, we can do it. Sony said we can do it for every game, and I just think that, from Sony's point of view, they're probably looking at their sales figures and saying, well, the customers are telling us that they don't want games on discs because, 90% of purchases are through the PlayStation Store. So clearly, people don't want to buy the games on discs. And this was a sort of an argument I was sort of having to myself. Well, actually, people don't want it. Why are people making a fuss?
Yeah.
But then actually, I listened to John Lineman on the Digital Foundry podcast the other day. And he made a good point. When actually, big AAA games, it's nearer 50% of people want to buy them on disc. So they've got them on their shelves, so they can trade them in, so that they can keep them. They just want to buy them on disc for whatever reason. So they're looking at it and going, well, actually, a lot of people are going, well, 90% of transactions are on the PlayStation Store. So that's people buying points. That's people buying DLC. That's people buying, a £7 indie game. That's people buying, what's it called, for battle passes and stuff like that. So yes, 90% of transactions are through the PlayStation Store, but for top tier games that people want, your Grand Theft Autos, your Call of Duties, your your next Spider-Man games, why aren't they coming out on disc? So then people can sort of purchase them and and actually own them for life, because you do get issues. And I'd invite anyone to go, okay, you want to get into the Forza Forza Horizon games. Well, you can only buy Forza 5 and 6 now, unless you go and buy second-hand ones. You can only buy 5 and 6. So and in a few years' time, you only be able to buy 6. So, and then in 5 years' time, you won't be able to buy any of them. And that's the reality, unless you search them out on disc.
Exactly, yeah. And if those games never came out on disc in the first place, and they have further sequels, they'll be completely inaccessible. Especially if they're an exclusive to that console, unless you have some kind of pirated, hacked, console. which hopefully, you're kind of looking for the piracy to be a way to preserve this stuff now. Those games are basically not obtainable to anybody that's not, into hacking or getting dodgy copies of things. I mean, I think it's really, Sony's in a bit of a rut at the moment, because now their next console, the value proposition of it, I don't think is that great. They're going to be competing against, kind of Steam machines, really, and PC gaming more generally.
Right, yes. So the PlayStation 6 is going to be competing against the Switch 2, is going to be competing against the Steam machine, Project Helix, PC gaming. It's where's it going to be like? Oh, we're better than. Why would you get a PlayStation 6 when there are all these other options available? They'll just have a bit of the pie.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing that will draw you to something like that is if they have some absolutely stunning exclusive games, but there's no sign of that. It will take them 10 years to make one of them. And in the meantime, you'll be comparing the cost of a game that you might be interested in on PSN, and you'll see, Steam keys for it are half the price of that. So, well, why am I spending money on, exclusively through PSN? Basically, it's a gaming PC that's locked to one store. And I have to pay to play online. I have to pay for just to get cloud saves, when I could just, get some Asus Steam machine, or if hopefully there'll be more Steam machines then. And if people will argue, well, it's clunkier gaming PCs. You've got to do more tinkering and stuff like that. You don't have to do any of that stuff if you're not interested in any of that. You can download the game, not touch any kind of support files or anything. Modern games, especially, maybe you have to click a button on a launcher, and that's as difficult as it gets. And if you're not into any of that stuff, setting up emulators or anything, you can have a pretty close to certainly with SteamOS, pretty close to a PlayStation 5 couch gaming, sofa gaming experience, as you desire. So I think that isn't even going to be. And by the time the PS6 comes out, potentially we'll see what the Xbox answer to SteamOS is, and that might even, close that gap even more if they make something even more sort of elegant. I doubt it, but we'll see. And you're going to be paying. Potentially, I mean, the cost of the system is going to be through the roof, as we know. It's probably going to be pushing £1,000. So the argument of, well, I can get a a games console is £300, whereas a gaming PC, the good one's £1,000. That argument is going to be out the window now. They'll be a cost about the same. Certainly, if you've got a Project Helix device, which is a gaming PC that straddles the line between console and PC, that will be about the same as a PS6. And a better value proposition, I think, if you can put Steam games on it and Epic Games and GOG and everything. I just don't see the point in buying if there's no real. I mean, even if there is one big major exclusive, I think even then you have to decide whether it's worth it. If Uncharted 5 is all you care about, maybe, but they've had so few exclusives.
It used to be. All the time, Sony were bringing out sort of new games, and then you literally go onto, onto the PlayStation Store, or what's it, Spider-Man, Gran Turismo, Ghost of Tsushima, or
Horizon,
Horizon, and it's been 2 Horizon games. That's it, just 2. Yeah. You can buy them on the PC as well, and.
You might want the PS6 remaster of Last of Us, but
obviously,
do another one,
buy a PlayStation 6 for that, of course. But I think that
you can get on the PC now, so
I think there's really only one legacy console as we know it in the old days of system, and that'll be Nintendo.
Yeah, 100%.
Because
they bang out
that'll be the only one. Yeah, it bangs out the exclusives. It's got great IPs.
Fairly cheap.
Yeah, they go down. They go down the route of they don't just make a PC box and then stick their their store on it, were the only way to buy games. They'll actually go in there and go, hold on, we're gonna, make something a little bit different, make something innovative. And I think that moving forward in the old-fashioned console world, it'll be Nintendo will be the only one left.
Yeah, and they've got third-party stuff is really good on the Switch now. The Switch basically rehabilitated that kind of relationship Nintendo had with, which is a bit, it'll be up and down depending on each generation of Nintendo console. Some of them were better supported than others. The Wii U it died a complete death. But then the Switch, it started off a bit slow because no one wanted to make third-party games initially because they needed to see the people were buying it. Then the Switch became as popular as it did, and then we got Doom 2016 and possible ports to it, and FIFA then started coming out for it, and then we get to the Switch 2 now, where that baseline has been established, and we're already getting Cyberpunk and Star Wars Outlaws and all those brilliant third-party games that the Switch kind of struggled a little bit with at the start, the Switch 1. Now they're just getting them because they know that that base is there to support it, and people are going to buy the Switch 2. And you've got the game key cards, which aren't great, but at least you can still take those to CEX, and sell them and buy second-hand ones because it will unlock the download for you to play the game. That's a better way to handle digital only, really. Yeah, it's annoying you need more storage to be able to get those downloads, and very few games are on the actual game cartridge on the Switch 2, but it's better than not having any option. But, I think Sony they will probably do a lot of code in a box stuff because they kind of have to. Otherwise, for those brick and mortar stores that still support video games, it does keep that presence and that mind share of Sony in people's minds. If they abandon that completely and said, no, you have to go to we only be able to get stuff off our store and our console, all of a sudden Nintendo will be the only video game available in a shop. And all the posters and all the marketing when you walk into a shop will be Nintendo.
Trev,
so they need to have
you've got
some kind of a thing.
You've got to think that around the world, and this is if PlayStation goes purely 100% on online only, no box product. How will people? If you I don't know, if you're 14 years old and you live in a sort of a developing country, but you've got a PlayStation 5 or something, then hold on, how are you going to buy games? You access to a credit card to put on there, or will there be some sort of antiquated weird point system to buy point, put codes in, and it's just making things difficult, isn't it? And I think I was listening to it, and people sort of saying that someone sort of was on there, and they go, well, I live in Brazil, and the price of games in Brazil are huge. So a lot of people are, they'll borrow games, they'll trade games, they'll buy second-hand games, that'll
collapse completely with the PS6.
Exactly. There's none of that. So they've got to sort of think about, in Japan, in South Korea, in the USA, lots of people do, download that. That seems to be the 100% way of doing it. But in reality, a lot of developing countries, and then they'll move to like the Switch because they're like, I'll get the game key card, put that in, away I go. And then, there might be a 10-minute download, a 15-minute download, an hour download, but you're ultimately going to be able to play the game. And then you can then play it, complete it, and then sell it to your friend or sell it to a shop or something like that. And, I don't think, with sort of gaming is, they sort of want, we want to sell a game for £60. That's what we want, but you're assuming you're selling a game for £60, but a lot of people trade in their old games to get the new game for £60, and then if the game is purely for £60 on the PlayStation Store, that's the only place you can get it. it's like, well, you can't trade in your old games for to pay towards that.
Ultimately, I mean, all that stuff will collapse, and basically people will migrate to places where there is an element of that. They'll go to the PC, where you can get cheaper games. Okay, there's not so much of a used market for that, but there are much cheaper keys. Yeah, a AAA game on the PS6 will be 60 quid, probably forever, apart from the odd sale where they knock £5 off. But you look at the same game in Steam and it'll be 20 quid less. Potentially 3 or 4 years down the line, it'll be a couple of quid, where it still would be 60 quid on PSN. They'll either do that or they'll go to Nintendo, where they won't get whatever Sony exclusive there might be, but they'll be able to get physical. There'll be game key cards, but they'll be second hand. They'll be a bit cheaper. You could exchange a bunch of them to get another one. All that stuff that you said, there'll still be mechanisms for that in the Nintendo universe. I think certainly those places like Brazil, those other countries where gaming is very expensive, they'll probably just go straight to the PC, probably because it's easy to pirate things, and also because there are keys that are cheaper, and the digital markets are much cheaper for those, so they'll completely abandon Sony. And I don't know if Nintendo's a big deal in a lot of those places anyway, but PC gaming will take over, and ultimately, like a PS6, I mean. Going into the PS6, which probably isn't going to be around till for another couple of years, it's probably got the least amount of momentum that any Sony console has had since the original PlayStation, or maybe the Vita. You could probably say they haven't really had an outright failure apart from the Vita. The PS1 obviously was a monumental success. The PS2 was a giant success. The PS3, there was a little bit of a drop off, but it still sold, nearly 90 million units. That's a pretty big deal. The PS5 has sold about the same as the PS3 has, and so there's the PS4 was a giant success. The PS5 is a success. But can you really see £1,000 PS6 with digital only games that cost 60, 70 quid? Selling 80, 90, 100 million units? I really don't think so.
And then you got to pay a monthly charge to do online gaming.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was interested in like the handheld, and I might still be, but that's probably going to be a digital only device, and it will probably just be like a PSN. It'll really be there just to play what you get on the PSN subscription, and kind of nothing else. I don't think they'll have a mechanism where you've got your big pile of PS5 discs. I want to play them on the PS6 handheld. I don't think. I mean, there's been some rumors of Xbox actually having a mechanism that they're going to roll out where you can get a digital copy of a game you've got on disc. You'll kind of validate the digital copy with your disc, and then it will give you a digital copy that will then work wherever you can, where you can log in. I don't think Sony are going to do anything like that. So the PS6 will effectively be locked out of any of those disc-based games. The handheld. Probably the home console as well. You won't be able to put a disc in from your PS5 collection. So, they might release a disc-based version, or they'll release a separate disc drive to allow you to use those. I think they'll probably allow you to use those discs on the PS6 console, but then again, they might not, which would be a disaster. You'd have all these people have a giant shelf of PS5 games behind them, and none of them will work. Or they've got to buy them again as a digital copy, which I'm not sure people will be happy about that, because those games won't be cheap. The Spider-Man Miles Morales from 2020 will still be 60 quid. In 3 years' time when the PS6 is coming out on their marketplace. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart will be 60 quid still. Wait, there might be a sale where they knock a tenner off it. It'll still be 50 quid. That same game will be $1.99 on Steam. So. Yeah, it's just I can't. At best, I can't see them really getting the numbers that the PS5 got. At worst, it might completely tank their video game business. And I don't know what they would do at that point. Maybe they'll just try and become kind of a third party, and PlayStation will just be like Xbox, and it would just be an app you can put on your PC and get with some exclusive games on that app. Like, I guess the Xbox has the odd exclusive game that you can't get on Steam. Or the Epic Store sometimes has the odd exclusive, or the mostly timed exclusives on the Epic Store. That might be the future for Sony, but yeah, they're in trouble really. They're kind of just torpedoing their entire any goodwill that they've garnered. The price rises. The PS6 is going to be super expensive, and now you won't be able to buy any discs, and they're kind of taking a giant dump on all of that. So yeah, it's going to be things are going to really like turn upside down. Probably Nintendo are poised to take advantage, I think, of these mishaps that their rivals, have been doing. So that'll be interesting to see where they could benefit from that. But yeah, I mean, wow, we could have dedicated separate episodes to each of these topics, but we want to try and talk about them. Yeah, we want to try and discuss them while they're relatively new, and we might go. Well, I'm sure we'll be diving deeper into them when obviously the PS6 starts to be revealed, and the Xbox Project Helix, and how they handled previous generations of games, and if they're digital only or they're still discs, we'll find out. But anyway, Stu, where can you find us on the internet?
We're everywhere. So consoleshock.net is our website. You can find us on Facebook under Console Shock. You can find us on Twitter under Console Shock. You can find us on YouTube as well under Console Shock. And any podcast client. We had a huge jump last month in listeners or downloads for the podcast. So yeah, really sort of pleased about that. So anyone, hopefully lots of new listeners this week. But catch us anywhere and send us messages. We don't mind. We like any sort of feedback or stuff like that. It's always interesting to hear other people's. If you disagree, agree, reach out to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for any new listeners that have joined in. Hopefully that's part of what the boost that we saw. We really appreciate everyone checking our podcast out. We hope you've really enjoyed it and you're going to stick around for a bit. But otherwise, thank you everybody for listening as always, and we'll catch you in the next one. Take care.
Take it easy. Bye-bye.